Thank you. So every year I give a State of the Asterisk project update, as it is now known. For those who attended AstriDevCon, I do apologize. This will be a repeat of what you heard early, maybe with less content than you heard, since I may not go into so much technical stuff, but we'll see what happens. So year in review, Asterisk 21 was released in October. It's had 4 releases. Current is 21.10. Asterisk 20 had 9 releases. Asterisk 18 had 9 releases as well. And then a heads up, as I always give, 16 and 19 are now end of life, meaning they no longer receive bug fixes or security fixes. Meaning if you really want to stay up to date and receive security fixes, update to one of the more modern versions. Asterisk 18 is scheduled to go security fix only in October of this year. So your best bet is to go to Asterisk 20, which is a long-term supported release. Over the past year, we had 1,600 commits across all branches and about 1.5 million downloads. From the forum community interaction perspective, always like plugging the forums, accessible at community.asterisk.org. We had over 8,500 new posts and over 610 new contributors. If you're not on the forums, please join us, become a new contributor. And in comparison to last year, this was actually a 20% increase in activity, which is great to see. So Asterisk 21 is available. Generally, we do our releases in October each year of the major stuff. So it was released on October 19th. Comprised of 380 commits from 40 different individual contributors. So the top contributors by commits, Naveen Albert, also known as Interlinked on GitHub and IRC, was number 1. George Joseph, who is an Asterisk team member who wasn't able to make it this year, came in 2nd. Sean Bright, an Asterisk community contributor, came in 3rd. Mike, who's over there, came in 4th. And then somehow I managed to do code in the last year. I don't know how, so I was in the 5th place. So standard release versus LTS. I always go over this as a reminder to people if you're new or weren't aware of it. Standard releases, we 1 year we'll do a standard release. Next year will be a long-term supported release. 21 is a standard release. So it receives 1 year of bug fixes as well as an additional year of security fixes. An LTS lives on longer, so it gets 4 years of bug fixes with an additional year of security fixes, giving LTS releases a lifetime of 5 years. So some examples of those are 18 and 20. If you want to, there's nothing to say you can't just keep following the version even if it is standard or LTS. Asterisk these days is pretty stable even on a standard release. Standard releases generally reserved for these days major architectural changes or changes internally that would be backwards incompatible from a development perspective. Even user-facing stuff, we try not to break it even in a standard release. So what's new over the past year? Talk about GitHub, some other infrastructure stuff, community, which I'll explain what community is, the media experience score, Stir Shaken, and Matt Fredrickson's personal favorite, miscellaneous fun. So the GitHub move. Last year, I talked about how we were moving elsewhere, and so we actually did that. We moved to GitHub. We chose GitHub after evaluation of different options, but it best fit our usage. And fundamentally, the Atlassian stack was just no longer viable for self-hosting. Atlassian killed that product, and even if we wanted to continue it, we could move to the Atlassian Enterprise solution. However, that had no open source option, so it would have cost about $1.5 million a year. So obviously, that wasn't a viable option. As well, some people may not know this, but the Asterisk team also handles the infrastructure stuff. So the less time we spend on infrastructure is more time we can spend on Asterisk. We also use this as an opportunity to revisit policies and practices just to tweak or streamline things. So issue tracking is now over on GitHub. They're filed in the respective repo. Unlike FreePBX, we don't have that many repos that are actively used. We generally just have Asterisk and Test Suite, so we don't have an issue tracker specific repo. So if you have an Asterisk problem, you just file it in the Asterisk repo. One of the critical things when it came to all this migration and infrastructure work is maintaining our history. Asterisk has been around for 25 years. We've experienced what losing history or not having good history can be like. For example, if you go through the repo for Asterisk, you go back to the very beginning, what you'll see is just imported version 0.4 from FTP server. And there's no other history of what happened with development or anything like that. So we archived off our issues from our previous JIRA. So you can go to issues-archive.asterisk.org and find those and reference them if need be. We also took the time to simplify issue filing and reduce the amount of information that we ask for. And from a GitHub perspective, just like was mentioned for FreePBX, we're using issue labels to manage things. One of those being the triage label, and then something unique to the Asterisk project when it comes to open source at Sangoma, a support level. How many people know what a support level for a module is in Asterisk and what it means? Nope? Yeah, one. So in Asterisk, every module has a support level. That's basically the commitment there is to solving problems in it. There is core, which means that Sangoma will take on fixing issues in that. When an issue is filed, that's core support level. We copy that over onto our internal JIRA, and that gets prioritized alongside internal stuff, customer stuff, everything. It's all one view for us. Extended support level stuff is things that are supported by the community. There may or may not be an explicit maintainer for it. It may just be the community at large. And then there's also deprecated to give you warning that something is potentially going to be, or it will be deprecated. Something that's recently been added in the past year or two is also the version that something has been deprecated in and will be removed in. So if you load up Asterisk at the end of the load process, it'll tell you if some deprecated modules are loaded, when they'll be removed, and if there's a replacement. And you can also view that information in menu select itself. And something else that's new for the project is we now accept feature requests. Previously, we didn't without a patch, but now we have a separate repository called asterisk-feature-requests, where you can file feature requests as issues. So if there's something you'd like to see in Asterisk, feel free to throw it in there. If there's an existing issue for something you find interesting, go for it there as well and add a comment. It does have a disclaimer, though, specifically in the README for the repo, that there's no guarantee that it'll actually get worked on, but that is the place that we are keeping track of it. So contributions, unsurprisingly, we're using GitHub pull requests. There is a little bit of custom stuff because unlike a lot of other projects on GitHub and other places, we at any given time have a lot of branches in flight that we're applying security and bug fixes to. And so we wanted to make it easy to get stuff in the right place. And so we used some custom comments and some GitHub stuff to basically make it so that stuff will automatically get merged into the appropriate branches, such as 18 and 20, through a single pull request to make it easier for developers. We're using GitHub Actions for CI and automation, including merging and testing. All of this is, of course, also on GitHub. Everything's on GitHub. There's a separate asterisk-ci-actions repo. You can submit pull requests there as well if you want to help improve the process, speed it up, or you can even change that was submitted was to actually add I think I ended up asking for it to be called testing, so that there's a symlink in the download server for testing as well as releases. So if you have CI that you want to pull down, if it's the release or there's a testing version or something, you just use that link and it'll just work. So contributor license agreement, I talked about this morning. Standardized, one CLA for the entire company. Sign it once. You can contribute to any of our stuff, and its acceptance is instant. So no delay, no review by legal or anything like that. Documentation. So just like issue tracking using Jira, our documentation was stored on Confluence, which is another Atlassian product. Unlike FreePBX, which kind of has a different developer ecosystem and a different user base, they went to using a cloud instance for their documentation. We decided to take the opportunity to move that into Git as well. So we pulled it out of Confluence, adapted it, changed it as best we could automatically, and put it into a documentation repository. This gets turned into regular HTML overnight, each night using GitHub Actions, and it's hosted on GitHub Pages. You can also run this locally, which was unlike the Confluence stuff. So if you are wanting to improve documentation and you actually want to see your results as it's going, you can totally run that locally. Pull requests, just like everything else for documentation, are also accepted. I fully acknowledge that the conversion and move process was not perfect. Nothing like this ever is. So if you have improvements for formatting, language, they are very welcome, and generally I just give them a quick look and hit merge and they get deployed overnight. So some other infrastructure changes. How many people noticed or knew that we completely redid the download server? Other Mike did. Yeah, so there's a new download server, application server, a new legacy SVN server. That's all new. You guys didn't probably even notice, or because that was kind of the point. We completely migrated that without anyone noticing and maintained all of the existing functionality, layout, everything. There's a new developer mailing list, groups.io/g/asteriskdev. Mailing lists have been discontinued. The list archives, however, just like issues, will remain available. And from a user and commercial perspective, those should move to the Asterisk community forums instead, which, as previously shown, is quite a bit more lively than the mailing lists. I also took the time to configure and tweak the community forums. So for those who do prefer email, you can create threads through email. You can respond through email. You can continue to use email exclusively if you want for that kind of interaction. It's totally up to you. So community change inclusion. How many people know what the community UCaaS platform is from Sangoma? Other Mike does. Chris does. How many people have heard of a company called NetFortris? That's all good. How many people remember Trixbox? There we go. How many people remember Phonality? A few more. So Trixbox came from a company called Phonality, which turned into a company called NetFortris, and Sangoma acquired NetFortris. How long ago, Nanad? Putting him on the spot. Yeah, so a year and a half or so. As a result, we brought on their UCaaS platform called Community. Unsurprisingly, it's built on Asterisk, specifically a forked version of Certified Asterisk. And so we undertook a project to include as many generally applicable changes as we could that the community team did to Asterisk, and make them open source. I mentioned this morning I don't like having special things, so that was a step to doing so. So we merged in some general fixes, which will show up in miscellaneous fun, and we merged in some new features. Mike did that work, actually, for some voicemail stuff. So community voicemail changes. How many people have ever dealt with manipulating the app voicemail boxes on the file system and deleting files and having to renumber stuff and all that? Yeah. So it's hard. It's annoying. We acknowledge that. There is future work that's going to hopefully improve that in some areas. But we did add some AMI actions and CLI commands to allow easier manipulation of that. So you can, for example, delete messages or mark things as read using AMI instead of having to directly manipulate the file system, which is an improvement over before. So if you have something like a web UI and you can get that through AMI, then that makes it easier. Media experience score, I talked about this a little bit this morning. Programmatically determined media score for a channel. It uses RTCP information to calculate the score. So round trip time, packet loss. Available in AMI events, dial plan. You can also monitor it in real time if you want through AMI, or put it into CDRs at the end of the call, just like FreePBX's CDR Pro does. So it is in use, actively used. And on the documentation site, we haven't hidden how we're doing it. I mean, the code is there, but we also have documentation on the doc site as to the calculation used for doing so, and then all of the references to ITU documentation of formulas and that kind of stuff. So you can take a gander there if you'd like. Stir Shaken, we participated in Open SIP-it once again, which was an event for testing SIP things such as Stir Shaken. We did further identify issues in our Stir Shaken implementation. The Stir Shaken implementation in Asterisk was one of the first when things were still just being figured out of how Stir Shaken's going to work in the real world, which is still going on to this day. So we decided on an approach for resolving issues, including the use of an outside library called libjwt. It's been a major overhaul. There's pull requests up on GitHub for it still, and tests are still being written. But I think once all that gets merged and gets released, it's going to be one of the best implementations for Stir Shaken, probably. So some miscellaneous fun stuff. PJSIP now sends session interval timer to small response. Chandati. How many people are still using Chandati? I am unsurprised. Chandati now supports called subscriber held capability on analog. ARI now supports a refer mechanism for use with PJSIP. Chandati now supports auto-originating after hangup. PJSIP now supports TLS version 1.3 if it's present. And then something I worked on, which I will elaborate, caller priority changes in app queue can now be applied immediately in relation to other channels present in the queue. And I will start with this question, which is, you can change the priority of a caller in a queue through AMI. When you do that, do you expect it to occur immediately amongst the other channels, amongst the other callers that are waiting? So if I increase the priority and I jump ahead of another channel, another caller, do you expect that to happen immediately? I think that's a reasonable expectation. The previous behavior was no, only new callers. So it wasn't immediately reflected. So there's now the ability to do that if you wish. Users.conf has now been deprecated, albeit not removed. How many people have used users.conf? Nope. I'm glad to hear that in a way. For debugging, debug threads now has locked timestamps, which was a contribution from the community side. An option was added to app queue to prevent a caller from jumping ahead of another caller for agents in multiple queues. Agents across multiple queues has always been problematic in app queue at times. So community members are slowly trickling in options to improve that behavior. The park AMI action now allows specifying the parking space to park in. And there's now a new AMI action called core show channel map, which was actually a request from the Switchvox team. And it gets all the channels a channel is connected to. So it essentially gives you a graph of the full connections of a channel through bridges, through local channels. It'll show you everything it's connected to, which can be quite handy for debugging, for example. Chandati now has full caller ID support on analog. ARI now allows specifying an SDP label when creating a bridge, which is placed in SDP of applicable participants, which is good for WebRTC, SFU video conferencing stuff. AppQ now preserves pause reason for real-time queues. The SLA applications, or shared line appearance applications, how many people have used those before? Nope, not too surprised. They were written in a time when the only way to do conference bridges was AppMeetMe, so those have been updated to use the bridging API instead. PJSIP now returns all codecs on an empty reinvite for late offers. And then another thing that came from the community side was a new CEL event added for the beginning of local channel optimization. Dundee, how many people have used Dundee in the past? David Duffett has. Another one. So Dundee now supports PJSIP. The install prereq script now supports Linux Mint. How many people know of Linux? Not Linux Mint. Install prereq. A few. So in Asterisk, in the contrib/scripts directory, there is a script called install prereq, which will automatically detect the Linux distribution you are on and install all of the packages it can to satisfy as many dependencies in Asterisk. So personally, I use this when I'm provisioning basically my workstation. I just run the script and I can build pretty much all of the Asterisk modules and everything. So it could be handy from that perspective. The beep sound file can now be set using the touch mix monitor beep dial plan variable, which I believe was also a contribution from the community team. Mix monitor mute now supports specifying a mix monitor ID in case multiple mix monitors are happening on a channel. This was a request from Switchvox. AppQ now supports specifying a delay for starting periodic announcements. There's now a send flash AMI action. And then the HTTP media cache has configurable options now. Fun fact, in case anyone didn't know, you can pass an HTTP address to playback, and it'll just play back in the file from there. It doesn't stream it, it downloads it and then plays it, just as an FYI. The last few things, app directory can now skip calling and instead return the extension result as a dial plan variable. This was another contribution from the community team. Send DTMF now has an option to answer the channel. And PJSIP was upgraded to 2.13, and then we upgraded it to 2.14 a short time ago. The next set of releases should have it at 2.14. Normally, we do this fairly quickly, but we encountered test failures as a result of the upgrade, so we needed to figure out whether there was an issue in PJSIP, an issue in Asterisk, or that kind of stuff. It turned out that PJSIP had made some changes which altered the order of SIP packets, so tests expected them in a certain order, and that was no longer true. So we had to check the RC and make sure that it was still valid within the RC, and everything was. So all PJSIP now supports SIP causes as part of RC 3326. So some upcoming stuff in Asterisk. We have the release of the Stir Shaken improvements. So I'm not sure they'll get in the immediate next set of releases, but maybe the ones after that. Finalizing the infrastructure move. So we are almost completely off the old infrastructure. The only thing we have left is the list archives. And after that, we'll be completely off that infrastructure, which is absolutely great. We have some quality of life improvements coming up, and then further improvements from the community UCaaS platform. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. So the community UCaaS platform is running Asterisk, like I said. It's a multi-tenant solution. It is scalable up and down based on load and needs. And this is kind of counter to how Asterisk was traditionally made to be written or used. And so what the community UCaaS platform and team are giving us are insight into using Asterisk in that way, what kind of problems they've encountered, ways we can improve Asterisk to better fit that environment. At DevCon, for example, one of the things Matt Fredrickson brought up was monitoring. How do you know when something is overloaded? Or how do you know when you need to really scale up Asterisk and add more instances? So that's kind of things we're getting out of the community UCaaS platform, is that kind of knowledge and insight, and also looking at the changes they did that are specific to them to look at how we can do those in a more generic fashion and make that applicable to not just them, but everyone. So that'll continue over the next while too. Some reminders. I always give reminders. Asterisk 16 and 19 are end of life. No more fixes. It's always a good idea to keep track of what's happening in newer non-LTS as well as LTS releases. If you don't, you can potentially experience big surprises when you move forward. In general, though, these days the project is in a generally stable manner, and we try actively to not break people. I'd like to think over the past few years, upgrades have been a breeze. It's only when you're extremely clever that things can get a little bit dicey, but for most people, it's an easy update. This includes even at Sangoma. So Switchvox as a product tracks certified Asterisk. We took them from 13 to 16 to 18. And that first hurdle was hard, but after that, it's been smooth sailing for them, which is absolutely great. ChanSIP, we bid adieu to you. It's gone in Asterisk 21. Code's not even there. Don't even try. So you got to move to ChanPJSIP. There have also been other deprecated modules that have been removed. On the documentation site, there's a module deprecations page, which lists things that are up for deprecation, that have been deprecated, the versions and all that stuff. We do send out emails. Well, not anymore. We post now on the forum when a deprecation is going to happen and get some feedback, so we can better judge whether it's a good idea to deprecate something, whether it's still in use, or whether someone wants to step up and maintain it going forward. Alongside the module deprecation wiki page, the Asterisk versions wiki page, really need to update that documentation page. The Asterisk versions wiki page, documentation page, keeps track of the Asterisk versions. It'll tell you when it was released, when it's going to go security fix only, and when it's going to go end of life, so you can plan accordingly. And this has gone back a considerable number of years, and it'll continue to get updated going forward. So when you see a release happen, you can go over to the Asterisk versions page and check out those dates. So I highly suggest doing that. Any questions, comments, or thoughts? Even if you don't have any now, I'm always hanging out on the Asterisk community forums. You can post there with stuff. Stuff it has something. I'll finish my talking about that. If you have questions or you run into issues, community forums are great. I'm always there, so if you post something, there's a chance I'll chime in amongst other people. Go for it, David.
Hi, yes, just a quick question on the wonderful documentation. When you go to the wiki, you use different links. It now goes to the front page of the Sangoma support. I wondered whether there's going to be any page tracking so you could get kind of directly into PJSIP comps, for example, like you used to be able to.
So there are new links. We can't yet. Maybe we'll be able to forward old links because there is no mapping as such. Confluence made up its own identifiers and stuff, and I'm not sure we have sufficient information to be able to do such things. But there is an open issue on the repository for the documentation for doing just that, and a community member has provided some possible solutions. So that's on the list to look at.
Great, thank you.
If other people have suggestions on how we could approach that, please do comment on that issue. Ideas are welcome. Any other questions? I guess not. I will also say, as shown up in the corner, it's 25 years of Asterisk. Asterisk has been around a long time. We have, I don't know, probably champagne or something over there. We're gonna do a toast. Matt Fredrickson is gonna do the toast. Matt has been going really off script. There is no script for this. I'm making up as I go. Matt has been around longer than I for Asterisk. He was there almost at the beginning. I asked him how long, and I think he said 2000? Yeah. So Asterisk was 1999. Matt was 2000. He was one of the first employees at Digium, I think. So he's been around a long time. And now I'm going to hand it over to him.
Thank you, Josh. Yeah, it was an honor that you'd asked me to do this. I hope you guys don't mind as I was trying to think about how to meaningfully commemorate the impact that Asterisk has had on our industry. I really had to step back and think about some things. At least, those of us, probably all of us here, we've worked in the communications industry for a long time, right? There's many of you that have many years of experience working in the communications industry. And I think oftentimes in our industry, I don't know about you, but for me, sometimes the way I think about it is I think about it, oftentimes in terms of billable minutes, right? How many billable minutes are we charging, right? Or, or in technological blocks, like how do I build solutions with SBCs and asterisks, and which interfaces do I use to be able to create things, create solutions for customers, right? And I think that's okay, but as I was thinking through that, I think that sometimes you have to transcend that, and you have to remember that, like, what are those things doing that we're facilitating, that we're creating and doing as we utilize communications technology, right? Like Asterisk. We're making meaningful connections for people happen. There are doctors that, somebody just came in last week for a screening, and there's a doctor that was calling back and letting them know that they don't have cancer. It's okay, right? There's someone at the end of a long day is really rough first day on the job, and they need to call their loved one, a spouse or something like that, to just talk to them, to have comfort, right? I had a family member recently, and this is kind of personal, but he was out cutting some trees with a chainsaw. And chainsaws are pretty awesome, but they're kind of dangerous too. And he accidentally cut his leg pretty deeply, right here. And it was pretty serious. Like he was far away from civilization. He was a little bit further out, and but he was able to make a phone call to some medical professionals, and he was able to get quickly taken to a hospital. And we were really worried that he probably would not be able to use his leg after that, because it severed a lot of really important things, a lot of nerves, a lot of connective tissues and things like that. But he was able actually to get to a hospital quick enough and talk to doctors quick enough for them to do some surgery on it and he's regained most of his function in his leg, which is pretty amazing. If he didn't have easy access and quick access to communications technologies that allowed him to do that, he might have had a different outcome in terms of his life function. So I don't want to wax too personal, but I think that it is important to remember past the pieces of technology, right, that we use to make solutions, and we build things, and we build things, and we try to build businesses. But at the end of the day, it's about meaningful personal connection and helping people, right? And that's what I'd like to think about. So Asterisk was a huge driver in terms of dropping the barrier to entry to communications technology in the early 2000s. Asterisk dropped the cost barrier significantly. So it went from having to pay, $50,000 for an office phone system, $100,000 for a small office phone system, to buying a PC and maybe plugging in a line card, right, to make it happen. I'll never forget conversations I had with Mark Spencer and the time I ever worked with him. And, he started it because he needed a phone system for his Linux support business. And he couldn't afford the phone system. It was too much. And he's like, well, if I can get a phone line into a PC, I can make it pretty much do whatever I want. And that's where Asterisk started, right? And then from there, it's, proliferation of Asterisk and other technologies like that have created this entire industry, right, and have facilitated lower cost communication solutions to people and helping people have more and more and easier access to technology. And so, and I could go on, right? I remember over the years hearing all sorts of just really interesting things that having free and open source access to that technology, stuff that a big company never would have, solutions that a big company never would have been able to justify in terms of building a one-off solution based on what they had before, right? That allowed people to be empowered to be able to do that. So I've spoken too long, but this is meaningful and it's close to me. And I'm grateful that I get to work in this industry and that I've been able to work with Asterisk for all these years and its role in trying to continue to get lower cost access to communication technology to people. And with that, 25 years, right?
Thanks, Matt. 2000, Matt and I were, we were in different companies, but I was right there with him, as the Asterisk took off. 30 seconds, when just toast for 25 years of Asterisk. Josh, Asterisk teams, thank you. For Aubrey Day, you guys work years, year in, year out, building this amazing software, working with the community. So thank you, first of all. Thank you to the community. Thank you for all of you that use it. Thank you for all of you that, empower and help us continue to grow and push the open source forward. So 25 years, huge achievement. Super honored to be part of it, super honored to be pushing this forward, and working with all of you. So Asterisk was a huge innovation boost, for last 20 years, the way AI is kind of doing it now, and hopefully Asterisk goes another 25. So thank you all. Thank you for coming. Have a great day. Let's enjoy some champagne.
As well as you're making your way to Champagne, we also have a video that marketing made for us kindly that I'll be showing now. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed this AstriCon 2024. Have a good day, everyone.